is there a future, for a black man in South Africa?
There's a politically correct answer I can give you, right? And which is probably what normally, people would share. But to be quite honest, when I look at things, the future is very bleak. Yes, remember that there will be voices that say we are creating opportunities for you. We have BE, we have such and such. There's corporates that are employing people and governments that are employing people. And those are the media voices. And I suppose those media voices are supposed to be there to create a feeling of hope. A country without hope goes down faster than it's actually going in reality.
Sanibonani, my name is Bongani Kaluvalo Ongenavalo, the founder of Cool Dads Foundation and also the editor of the book A Father, a Stranger, Mzansi Memoirs on Fatherhood. I would like to welcome you on Men 360 for another episode where we discuss is South Africa having a future for a black man. This platform is a men's lifestyle magazine where we tackle issues that affect men, but also most importantly, we educate each other as men, as brothers and sons, about how do we develop a better society for ourselves and for our children. That includes, of course, our partners as well. So today I'm having a conversation with a brother of mine and a friend, Mzibomvu, Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu, who is also a father and an author, a fine artist. Let me allow you actually to introduce yourself. But he's here to help us tackle the issue of is South Africa having a future for black men? My brother, welcome and thank you very much for coming through. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me. Thank you for. I'm well. I'm well.
In one piece.
I'm in one piece.
Great.
Yeah, we are surviving.
Yeah, we've got no other
preparing
choice.
to thrive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Is it possible?
That's the question of the day.
Yes.
Is there a future for a black man in South Africa? But before that, yes. So in introducing myself, Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu njobonga nashilo. I am an author. I think right now the books that are currently active, I have Reimagining Myself, and I also have The Path to Great Joy, which is an art book, a coffee table art book. I've got a coaching background. I've been through life, so I've been helped, so now I can be able to help others. But also I'm also a South African man trying to find himself and navigate within the context of South Africa, whether we're talking socio-politically or economically or whatever the case may be, as umfana, especially okhulele lokishini. And also I'm a visual artist. I'm very passionate about indaba zamadoda. And I guess maybe that's one of the areas that we click a lot, because as men we go through a lot, and we tend to not speak out because of how we've been brought up. So I've used art as a voice, to kind of speak about some of the issues that society would rather not actually engage in, because they are very difficult conversations to have. And they always rattle feathers in one way or another, So basically I'm a voice, not because I am better than anyone else, but because I'm also going through what most people are going through. And I think that by standing up and talking out, it enables others to also stand up and say something about the reality of being a black man in South Africa. Yeah.
Actually, we can't have a conversation about Cool Dads outside of having to include you in the conversation, because of when we did the first picnic, Cool Dads picnic. Your daughter was a couple of months.
Yes.
So as we celebrate 10 years of the foundation, because this is our 10th year anniversary, and many people don't know or appreciate that we've been, in this
actively,
talking to mobilizing men to try and do better in society. And I always say that story can't be complete without having to talk about you, and your daughter. Probably just give us a glimpse of that day when we were having the Cool Dads picnic, what transpired. And because actually that actually makes your daughter 10 years this year.
She's 10 years this year, yes.
And
yes.
mine is 9 years.
Yeah, no. But her cooler now.
Yeah.
You know, with regards to my daughter, that day I think I got the invite from you to say, hey, Jonas is space uti, you know, amachita hlale and bond with their kids. And my daughter was just a few months old, and I was like, you know what, let me show up, because that's the relationship we had with the mother, you know. I would take care of the child, change the nappies, so she knew uti mangamba nomntana go right, even though she was just a few months old. And I think at some point you asked for an interview.
Yes.
And we did that interview, and then in the middle of that interview, and it was going very well, but in the middle of the interview, iweather changed.
Yeah.
You know, waqala kwashawa umoya nyana, and umntana wakhala, and you know, it was one of those, hey guys, listen,
Can't do this.
can't do it, cut. Sesiyahamba ke manje. Sathi umntana sigene emotweni. Siphume endabeni. Yeah, you know, and I guess that was the introduction to I don't even know what happened the rest of the day and the activities, but I guess that was to set the tone, I guess, in a way, Yoguti, we are going to be part of this journey and its ups and downs with the organization, with Cool Dads, and also Nami myself as a father, you know, going through Nami Ntozami, either when it comes to taking care of my kids or relationships with the mothers or whatever, you know, isn't that we couldn't have foreseen at that time. And I think being within Cool Dads then allowed me a space where I could find ways to navigate some of these problems, because now I realized, you know, I'm not the only one. We actually have societal problems as more than we have personal problems.
For me, that always, you know, stands out. And of course, what happened, you know, during the day when guys, because that was the birth of the foundation, because at that time it was still the movement, you know, and some of the things that the guys shared made us to think of what kind of an animal can assist this movement. And I think the conversation has not died, and I don't think it has changed, because it has always been the quest for black men having to be present in their children's lives, you know. And I think today it brings me to the topic of is there a future, you know, for a black man in South Africa? People will say apartheid is gone, there's democracy, equal opportunities, and people still want to thrive in relationships. People still want to make an impact in the economic, you know, participation. People still want to have a spiritual life, you know, people want to build communities. But is South Africa where we're sitting? Just as a man, you sitting here today, being the man that you are in the years that you have traveled in this life, in this country, when you sit thinking about yourself and thinking about the rest of us who are your friends, do you think there is a future for us black men?
The answer is and
feel free, I mean, we can have a drink.
We can have a drink, sometimes they need.
So we just need to drink something.
No, definitely. No, I'm with you. You know, there's a politically correct answer I can give you, right? And which is probably what normally, you know, people would share. But to be quite honest, when I look at things, the future is very bleak. Yes, remember that there will be voices that say we are creating opportunities for you. We have PE, we have such and such. There's corporates that are employing people and governments that are employing people. And those are the media voices. And I suppose those media voices are supposed to be there to create a feeling of hope. You know, a country without hope goes down faster than it's actually going in reality, because once people lose hope, then, you know, so, and I guess that's the problem with South Africa right now. It's sitting on hope. It's sitting on hope and prayer. You know, people are praying for things to be okay. People are hoping for things to be okay. But if you were to really take maybe a forensic look at how things are, you know, are being run or what is happening, or even not even a forensic look, just a general look of the upkeep of roads or stadiums and businesses dying on a day-to-day basis, either through load shedding or just an economy that cannot sustain them, then the reality of it is that no, no, there is no future for a black man in South Africa. So also when we look at race relations from an economic perspective, the inequalities are still too high, and we don't have access to the 80% of the economy that is still held by the minority, right? So, which means we don't even have resources or capital to cultivate our own economies, you know. So it doesn't look like, and there's no immediate system or way of bridging the gap, especially the gap of capital, because even when we look at how the government institutions were used and abused, you know, when it comes to rolling out. Because remember, if you don't have capital as a black person, then we were supposed to have the institutions back in the day, Mzibomvu and so forth, to come and bridge the gap of capital so that we can then cultivate an economy. But even those, they were not handled well. In fact, that money, most of it went through corruption. So when you look left, you don't have access to the 80% economy that we don't own. And when you look right, we don't have access to the capital that is supposed to bridge the gap of the inequality that came from the previous system. So literally, basically, you are black man, you're on your own.
Yeah.
So, and bese omunye uzothi ungayofuna umsebenzi kuphi onjani.
Before we even go to the different aspects that affect and make this picture a gloomy one or a bad or a good one, what entrenches South Africa not being conducive for a black man?
Look, let's look at the environment of a conducive environment of raising a boy child and then a man, right? There are two key ideas behind being a man, and which are instilled to us as men from a boyhood. One, you must be able to protect yourself and your family, and two, you must be able to provide. Those are the two key features. Now, with regards to protection, it could be a physical strength, it could be maybe your presence or whatsoever, and then it extends maybe to other things that start affecting other factors like economics and so forth, where you can build a wall around your house to protect your family, and then also get security and so forth, right? So then it starts affecting, but the whole idea is to create an environment where your family is protected. And then the second one, being to provide, means that there is an income, there's a source of income, a guaranteed stream of income or multiple streams of income to facilitate the act of providing for your family. And in our case, not just our immediate family, but also our mothers and our sisters and whoever else that does not have access to money that will help them live their lives, and take care of their basic necessities. Now, when you look at South Africa right now, very few kids that grew up in the 80s and 90s actually had parents that had access to those things adequate enough to, one, take them to a really good school, provide for them, let's say, for instance, martial arts classes, then further on be able to facilitate for them to prepare for maybe varsity, and then also be further on get ready to prepare for a family, whether we're talking about lobolo, mshato, and also having a home, So this is one stream of being a boy. Now, the environment currently right now is such that the way being a corner back then, it has deteriorated over the years. Now it's worse than it was back then, because we were from it's no secret to which must puma from apartheid to democracy. We only got the right to vote, which was the political power. Yeah. We did not get the economic power. And these two things are actually linked to economic power, because then they create the environment, the infrastructure and everything else. We have stadiums that have been run down over the years. So meaning that kids can't train, they can't exercise. Sports clubs that had to close. Sports at school, especially in the township schools. has declined extensively because even the upkeep of the schools has also gone down. So we can keep going on and on and on and on and create this gloomy picture. But if anyone is living in South Africa now, they know what is South Africa right now is not in a state where there's an environment for a young man to grow up to become a man that can provide and protect in the way that he should.
But look, I don't know, but the question also in the same picture that you're painting now is and earlier on you said black men are on your own.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's Steve Biko or somebody else who said that.
Right.
Or Malcolm X, I'm not sure. But somebody said it.
Somebody said it, yeah.
And somebody's living to tell the tale of that.
Yes.
So who then becomes the liberator of this black man in South Africa? Is there a willingness to, amongst us as black men, to change that which does not look positive for us? But also, secondly, do we have the capacity to do that?
So it reminds me of something. They say, show me the boy and I'll show you the man. And the first 7 years of a boy's life will determine how the man will be, because that's the shaping years. How have we been shaping the boys? That's the question. Have we been making an effort? So when you ask whose job is it to change the situation, let's start with, first of all, the education system. And how is it conditioning boys from birth to 7 years old? And then going forward, and also our families, how we're conditioning our kids, because those are we're the closest educators during that phase. And then the 7 to 14 phase, and then the 14 to 21. There is no concerted effort in making sure that there's proper interventions to guide boys through those first 21 years of their lives. So how are we then supposed to have men that know how to transform the country when they themselves were not taught how to be transformative, right? How to grow accordingly, how to deal with the issues of life, how to change with the winds, right? We're not taught that. Our character is not built. If you're fortunate enough to go to a good school, maybe you might have had a couple of mentors that would have called you to the side and say, "Bonganege, now you are getting out of hand," or "This is how you must do. This is how a young boy must behave." This is so.
Wait a second. So, what's the difference between a Bongane who goes to Mkumbulo Comprehensive School and then Ntsikelelo who goes to a Spring Secondary School? A Crawford or a GP's Town boys, are we not having the same opportunities?
No, absolutely not. So remember how the mind works. Whatever you put in is what you get out. Even investments, whatever you put in is what you get out. And the quality of what you put in will determine of the quality of the person that comes out, right? So parents spend a lot of money because they are following a culture. So either they'll go to a Catholic school because there's a Catholic culture there that will then be inculcated in the child. And then they'll hope that in the future, then those values will help them become better people. So already by being in that school, you are getting something that the other one doesn't have, right? So if I, for instance, not to say that our township schools don't have culture and values. There's very good teachers out there who are there for the kids, but it's not a standard theme. It's not standardized. And because if anything is not standardized, then we are just really hoping for someone to pick up, and run with it. But if there's no one, then it means you're going to lose a lot of kids through that system because they don't have exposure to the quality of education that comes with being on the other side, where parents can actually identify the culture of the school, the character building format. And I'm not saying they're perfect, by the way, but I'm saying that it already starts to create different values in these kids. And then you can start seeing by how they behave. For instance, if you as a parent in a township school do not teach your child to cultivate the habit of reading, not for studying umsebenzi wesikolo, no, reading. Just you going to the library, picking up a book every week, reading it, finishing it, then that child is not going to just pick it up. So you already have a. Instead, what they're going to the evidence of what you're going to see is of the environment, which is in our case right now mapiano. So it's no surprise we have more kids dancing on videos than we have kids reading, right? And we don't have even kids that are writing well anymore because they're not exposing themselves to reading.
So for me, while you're talking about that on resources, so can we then come back and say that we are misusing the little resources that we have because of would rather be encouraging kids to dance or do certain activities that would invest resources on instead of having to buy your child a book, sports gear, and so on. And also any other thing that comes to you having to be building your house and so on.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about that, how the little resources we have, are we mismanaging them or are we optimizing on them?
You know, it's a sad one, my brother, because, you know, there's a saying, if you know better, you do better. You know, so, and I feel people are doing the best with the resources they have, but in the context that they may not know enough. Do you know what I mean? Like if your mother or my mother was not educated in a way that would teach us to read books, then books would not be part of the conversation in the family. And she may think that the way she's using her money in terms of maybe saving, she's got an educational plan for you, but she can still buy you an iPad and your Balenciaga as a kid and so forth, and she feels that's okay. You might look as an outsider, and if you know something that she might not know, and say, actually, that's a waste of money. What you could have done is maybe invested in an educational tour that would then expose the kid to different cultures around the world. You know, like for instance, how kids from private schools would go to Kontiki, you know, when they'll travel the world at high school. And, you know, I'm not saying that yes, obviously all parents can afford that, but I'm saying that if you are that parent that could afford that, if you knew better, then you'd say, no, maybe not let me buy my son a Balenciaga, but let me rather buy him a trip with a, you know, a youth institution, what do they call, travel agencies. They've got these programs where then he can be exposed to different parts of the world, you know, and that's an extreme case. In the immediate, it would be then, instead of buying the child a PS3 or an Xbox, maybe let's say, how about we invest in or rather work on a system where you earn your way to a PS3 by reading maybe 1,000 books in the next 2 years, or whatever the case may be. You know, I know, okay, maybe that's extreme. Maybe 100 books will earn you. We're not trying to.
You read a book in 2 days when you were preparing for that interview. Was it 1 day, 2 days?
It was 1 day. It was 1 day.
200 and something pages.
Yeah, about 200 and something pages. But that was work related. It's doable. It's doable. So you could have it as a target to say, okay, for you to get your PS3, you have to read a certain number of books. That will train the child's mind to a point where you might actually eventually come to a place where he says, actually, Ma, I don't think I need that PS3 anymore, but there is an engineering pack that can teach me certain engineering skills that I'd like to play around with, because I learned some ideas from these books that I was reading, which then I can build certain things for myself, you know, because it changes the way the child thinks. So, but by just giving children what they are asking for without giving them conditions that will build them on their journey to getting there, then it's a missed opportunity. But then if you don't know better, you will not do better. You know, so there's a lot of things. I mean, for instance, I was fortunate enough, Oguti, I also got to be exposed to township education from primary school straight to high school. But the difference with me, though, was that Ekaya, my mother and my grandmother were very conscious about making sure Oguti, there was always a book around me, right? There was always something educational around me. There was always sports around me, you know. And I also learned how to make decisions, you know, based on that influence. So it wasn't ngathi, but it was things that would help me make decisions that other kids did not have the capacity to, because they didn't have the background. So their choices also reflected that. And as a result, we came out differently. So I'm not talking about something that I don't know. I'm talking about if you want certain quality, then there's certain quality information that you have to put in to get it out. But we're not doing that as a society.
You are exposed to both Kasi life and urban life. And West, not West in a bad way, but West, the art world.
Yes.
Art world, it's free spirits, explore life and so on.
Right.
Sitting here looking at groups of amajita ekasi, in whatever cohort, whether it be the religious cohort, the political cohort, amajita enkosi, they're blooming and drinking, and looking at guys in Bram, in Konka, all of these places where you find men gathering cohorts, whether it's men or with women. But do you think that with what we are doing, are we capable of having to make South Africa better for ourselves and our families? Looking at the behavior.
Yeah. So this is a very nuanced question, because you're talking about different segments of society that think differently, and also use their power and influence differently. So obviously, township was created to keep the black person in the township.
Let me
maybe rephrase.
Let me rephrase this.
Okay.
Because of the reason I'm talking about these different contexts is that at the end of the day, men are gathering with different levels of resources.
Yes.
And I'm saying there could be a liberated Ntsiki from the township, educated, and then you got a job and you stay in Sentin.
Yeah.
There could be a Bongani who got educated and decided to still stay Ekas.
Right.
Have access to the same resources, or the one who's struggling in the southern suburbs could be struggling like a township boy who's struggling. Probably the network is different. But I'm saying the attitude of where we are as we walk and participate in life, do we seem like people who are willing to change, not change your own, but be concerned beyond yourself?
The answer is, in the general, no. But this is why earlier when I said it's a nuanced, because it's got too many levels and too many things. But the general answer is a no, because it's still an every man for himself. I mean, if you know from experience, if you are from Sentin, most guys from Sentin are enjoying the privileges of actually men being poor. Because obviously, masasibeka nje isintu, amajita that have money will see township as a resource, your store. Right? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, and the fact that the men within the township are not capable of taking care of those girls is an advantage to them. Right? So for them to go back and develop those men, it will work against them.
Yes.
That's why people have ice boys. Right? Okay. Instead of empowering this guy that continues to help you, you like the power dynamic because there's certain privileges that come from this power dynamic. So the attitude, there's very few men that will say, I am going to pull a brother out from the township and actually maybe pay his fees and say, Ndwana, you are smart enough. What do you want to do, Eskele? I will do that. But they will fund 3 girls and pay for their fees, right? Simply because he has access to what he would never have with this young man. You know what I mean? So, and also because this young man is impoverished, the more young men are impoverished, it means the more access they have to women. Yeah, and it's been like that for a very long time. Maybe something that's not been spoken about, but it's something we see on a day-to-day basis. Which this is how men have been using power to make sure that other men are staying in their place. When ashalalapo, don't come here. Here it's just us. So with that attitude, no one is going to listen to anyone, right? First of all, if you don't have money, you don't have a voice within those circles, or any space where money is the dictator of position. You no matter how intelligent you are, asinandaba asifuni nokuyizwa indaba yakho akwazi nokwenza imali so yini soyikhuluma now you know, regardless of whether ubongane knows actually he's an engineer that knows how to fix the problem as a ESCO.
So the black man's life will still be bleak because of the power dynamic relations into this thing.
Yes.
So within ourselves, we want to keep a certain group of ourselves at that.
All apartheid did was teach black people how to be elite. It taught black people how to be elite. And then those that have managed to move into those spaces of being elite, the comfortable spaces of white people, are now the new masters of black people. And they will make sure that they keep their power, right? By making sure that these ones don't come here. Why do you want to come here? You don't belong here. If you couldn't take yourself out of there, why do you want to come here?
But how do we demobilize that and mobilize each other towards making a change towards a better South Africa for black men?
Yeah, now that is the question that will take more than this session for us to talk about, because, and not only just me, but a lot of us to talk about. It's the question that is about social building society, right? You know, classism has become rife in South Africa. That's why we have terms like grassroots level. When they talk about grassroots level, they're talking about people that they care about the least, right? And I'll tell you why. And maybe when people hear this, they might be shocked. But when the money trickles down, if you look at the budgets, the billions end at the rich. The millions come into the middle class. The thousands come into those below. And then whatever's left is at the grassroots level. You're not going to find you're not going to find a 10 billion project Ekasi or in the Eslalin.
Do you think the ruling party is assisting in making life more darker for a black man?
I don't want to answer that because I'm becoming apolitical. I want to talk about people themselves taking up the challenge of changing things in society. Yeah, well, I want to talk about citizens doing that, because if we're talking about the politicians, we're talking about the very same idea that I just spoke about of power dynamics. For instance, in South Africa, we are talking about the party in power. Already that's a wrong concept, because how politics is supposed to work is that people, through their taxes, pay for a fund. And that fund is the budget. And that budget has to be managed, right? And then there are people who come and say, we would like to volunteer to manage that budget. And then they vote for us. We will manage your budget this way. And then we as people then vote for the ones that we think will manage it best. And then they become civil servants because they are managing our money as people, right? Then as civil servants, then they roll out the resources in the effort to better our lives. In South Africa, we talk about power. Now, power is not given. You don't ask for power, right? Power is, colonization was powerful because it was forceful, right? Yeah, there was force. We didn't elect our colonizers. They took over.
So do you think a coup in South Africa can assist us with the state of things?
I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm apolitical. I don't want to get into politics, but I like looking at things from a social dynamic. You know what I mean? Because the politics have got their own trajectory right now.
That governs us. We can't run away. You can, not talk about one political party versus another.
Yeah.
But politics are part of the ecosystem.
Yes, they are.
They are part of the discourse.
Yes, they are.
Because also another question would be, whilst we are black men, we are spiritual beings. And how does then religion contribute in us furthering, the challenge that we're having of a bleak future, and actually not even only a future, a today, and when I say religion, cut across.
Cut across, yeah.
Christian,
Because we're talking about spiritual
African,
liberation.
Yes.
Now, that's a very interesting topic, and I think, for one, it requires a lot of unpacking. I don't think that it's a conversation that we could start now, but to highlight it is we are a very religious society, and it's linked to our beliefs, and beliefs are strong because beliefs they live on their own. They live in us on their own. That's why, depending on where you were born and how you were raised, and then the strength of your beliefs will be linked to that. So whether it's hindering or not, it's a question that I would not want to answer right now, because I would have to extensively contextualize it, because then next thing you know, you're gonna find someone take a clip and then without context then start saying, no, but this guy said this, and then next thing you know, it goes all south. But it's a very good question that you're raising, because it's part of who we are, and we tend to act as if religion is it's like a heart. You come with it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't live without it. And we take our beliefs as something that is not fluid or interchangeable, and because of the conditioning behind it, and also because of the fear behind it. Because there's certain, for instance, I think about how kids are brought into Christianity. I remember as a kid, they used to play us these movies of us going to hell. Like,
so you got scared.
They're like, okay, give your life to Jesus.
I think we're in hell.
Yeah.
It's a subject for another.
Yeah, subject for. Then they say, give your life to Jesus. And that's a big. That's a big choice, to give your life, to someone else. But then the conditions of you giving your life to someone else are not joyous conditions. In fact, normally you are crying when you do that. Because if you don't do this, you're gonna go to hell. As a person who's lived for 40 decades here on earth, that's not much of a choice. It's not much of a choice at all, But so you look at how religion is conditioned, and also you look at how religion is linked to the apartheid system and the colonization system, and then you look at the submissiveness of the whole conversation that comes with it, because all of it requires you to do one thing: to submit. And let's look at South Africa right now. What are black people doing, and what have they been doing all along? Submitting.
To who? Okay. No.
Let's not. I think it needs a thorough conversation where I can actually unpack certain things. That, because remember, there's religion, then there's the politics that drive religion. Religion,
and race as well in the midst of that.
And then there's race and economics in it.
Okay, look, I think you said probably the starting point in the realization that, in your words at least, that South Africa doesn't look good for
the black man. Yeah.
So where do we start? I think as a parting shot, where do we start? Because I think, Rome was not built in one day.
Yeah.
But journey of 1,000 miles starts with
a single step.
So where do we start?
So in the absence of a teacher, the student must find a teacher.
Okay.
Right. So I feel that the first thing is to understand, and maybe even from a personal development point of view, understand who we are as a people and how we think, how we were conditioned to think. So before we can go forward, we need to understand how we got here. And I think that's a conversation that a lot of South Africans don't like. We don't like talking about our past.
Yeah, no, we're told not to talk about it because it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, even the TRC, they were like, yeah, let's talk about what happened in apartheid. Then the people started to, hey, shut this down, let's move on. We don't want to talk about our past. So yeah. if we don't talk within a very open-minded context about where we come from as a country, where we come from as a people, and how we were conditioned to be the way we are, then we're not going to be able to find a space to then say, how can we then recondition ourselves in ways that we want to? Because right now we are acting out the way we were conditioned. We're not acting out the way we want ourselves to be conditioned. We're not conditioning ourselves.
Do we even know what we want to be?
Well, you'll only know once you know that you are ill conditioned.
Okay.
And until we know that we are sick, we won't know how to create the cure and create ourselves as something better. But right now, we are in denial that we are sick. We are in very much denial that we are sick. In fact, people would get mad. Like, who's sick? Who are you telling that, and it's like, hey, you're not, because they don't understand even what I'm saying. Yeah. You have to build all those blocks for them to get context of, this is actually what the person means. So then it becomes just a reactionary process without actually deep thought to say, man, wait a minute, actually, let me think about my behavior. Let me think, why do I do things in a certain way? Why do I go to certain places at a certain time? Why do I do this with my money? Why do I relate with a white person like this or an Indian person like that, and so forth? Most people will not go into those spaces of thought. Instead, they'll be reactionary and be like, why was you and that's part of the problem. It's the way that the whole thing has been conditioned, and you can't blame them. It's designed value, which is very reactionary. That's why when we have problems, we don't actually go to a boardroom and sit down and get to the root of the problem. We go to the streets and we strike.
Rapid, my friend. Rapid, just for purposes of today.
I think that right now, men are very necessary in South Africa. Black men are very necessary in South Africa. But the state of black men makes it impossible for them to play the role that they are supposed to be. That's why in most cases they are behind things like GBV and so forth. Also part of this conversation that we're talking about, which is an anger and element, and how to deal with emotional intelligence and so forth, things that are actually not within the scope of the things we've been taught as black boys growing up, and that's a conversation for another day. So if we are going to go forward, we need to really look into what does it mean, first of all, to be black in South Africa at this time, and what does it mean then, and what would it take for us as black men to start changing the way we're thinking, so that we're not just consumers, but actually active participants in building the country and also redressing some of the ills from our past. And also to stop this idea of being power hungry.
Yeah, being power, okay, it's a conversation for another day, because of, I think, they say throughout life you must be cognizant that there'll always be somebody that's below you and somebody that's above you. Yeah. And power relations, I don't think there's any neutral button in a quest for power, in different aspects. But I think for purposes of today, we will have to extend this conversation and probably zoom into it in the question of religion, the question of the economics that we exist in, and the question of race. Many people want to jump around the question of
course, it's an important conversation.
Of foreign relations as well. But I think for today, I should appreciate. I know that me and you can talk for about 4, 5, 6 hours on this, but because of where the end product must go, we've got those limitations. So we'll have part B and part C. But I can't, I don't have much words or many words to show how grateful I am for you having made time.
Thank you.
And for us having spoken without being on the contrary lines, where we always go.
We kept it here. We
must allow ourselves to go there, and so that we then stimulate the mind and trigger, people's, mind and feelings. We really appreciate you, and you must continue doing the great work. Actually, you've got a chapter here on A Father, a Stranger. You talk about the question of culture versus the presence of a father, and having to be denied certain opportunities because of monetary question. And I think people, as soon as they get themselves a copy of A Father, a Stranger, Mzansi memos on fatherhood, they'll be able to understand some of these dynamics that men find themselves in this country. But I would like to thank everyone who has taken time and their data to actually tune into this episode of Men 360 as we look into the question of, are black men having a future in South Africa? And I think the conversation should continue on social media and also on the commentary space. And I think they keep on saying you should subscribe, like or dislike the episode. But I say, please do like the episode. And we are hoping to see you next week on Tuesday. Thank you very much.